Awesome. All right. So yeah, let's kick it off where I think we left off, which I'm 90% sure. 80, 60, 30, who knows? But we're going to kick it off in Bill's story on page 13. And so for those that are just joining us, what's happened up until this point? So what's happened up until this point in Bill's story is we have watched Bill exhibit the signs of alcoholism. So we see that Bill, once he starts to drink, he has a lack of control. He starts to drink and the allergy takes him. And we've seen instances of this and examples of this. And then as a result of that, there's been some consequences. No worries, just glad you're here. Also, I didn't put this in the announcements, but if you throw things into the chat, I will absolutely go on tangents. So do with that what you will. You know, the power is in your hands. Well, my ADHD, off we go. Um, and so he's had some consequences with his alcoholism, and we've seen him swear off. We've seen him time and time and time again say, "That's it, I'm never going to drink again." And we've seen what kicks off for him is the mental obsession, and he drinks again. And then what happened for him is he had a step one experience. We saw that where on page 8 where he says, no words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. That quicksand stretched around him in all directions. He had met his match, he had met his maker. He'd been, oh, we're on page 13. I'm just doing some quick review and we're gonna rock and roll. He had been overwhelmed. That's his step one experience. And then who shows up for him is a childhood friend by the name of Ebby Thatcher. Bill Wilson, knowing what his problem was, the lack of control and lack of choice. He's met with his childhood friend, Ebby Thatcher, who gives him knowledge of what our solution is. Our solution in the rooms of 12 step is this pew, 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 pew. It's not pewing. Sorry, Terry's here. Hi, Terry. And we got to see each other in person. It's delightful. Pew, 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 pew. The solution, but we've really hyped up the solution, haven't we? So, oh, that's so kind. It's so wonderful that you're here. The solution is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. And then what we need is a way to go from that hopelessness of the step one experience, a lack of control, lack of choice, and to the solution of the spiritual awakening. And that's the 12 steps, what later became inevitably our 12 steps. And so that's those three pieces of information. What we read last week was Bill Wilson wrestling with step two. He's open, he's closed, he's open, he's closed. He's maybe he will, maybe he won't. And we saw him take his second step. He was willing to believe that there was a power greater than himself. And he was willing to believe that maybe that power could be bigger than his alcoholism, that maybe that power could relieve from him that mental obsession that took him back to the first drink. So now we're picking up on page 13. And it says, we're going to start with the very first paragraph. At the hospital. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. And so he checks himself into the town's hospital again. He's gone two other times. And if you're writing in your book, and why wouldn't you? It's fun. You can make a little note. It's December 11th of 1934. That's when he checks himself into the hospital. And so his sobriety date would technically be December 12th of 1934. You know, Bill Wilson, he had his step one experience and his step two experience while he was still drinking. And he goes to town's hospital, and kind of how the story goes is he was drinking on the subway and shows up to town's hospital and he's got two bottles with him and he's like, Silky, I got it this time. And Silkworth says, oh boy, you have, off to bed with you. And kind of a fun story is, or an interesting story is when Lois found out that Bill went to the hospital again, her reaction was anger. And you might not expect that. But Lois had heard that Bill Wilson's diagnosis was hopeless and terminal. And she's like, he's going to drink again. She knew it too. And she was like, man, how are we going to be able to afford this? And so, I mean, that's the condition that Bill was in. And it says treatment seemed wise, not for Lois, but for Bill, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. And yes, DT. So that happens during the withdrawal process, and withdrawing off alcohol and can be incredibly dangerous as a result. And now what we're going to see is Bill take a series of actions. And these series of actions are what is going to inevitably become our 12 steps. And so it says there, I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. And that sounds, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a third step to me. And we got some people here who are here for the sneaky prayers. Yeah, we got some sneaky prayer people. I don't want to be too loud. I'm like, I'm in a hotel. Woo. But people, anywho, sneaky prayers. Woo. um, so if you are looking for prayers in this book, this is a prayer. And if you're looking for a prayer that you could say, it's a prayer that I say. God, I humbly offer myself to you as I understand you. To do with me as you would, I place myself unreservedly under your care and direction. I admit that of myself I am nothing, that without you I am lost. It's a beautiful prayer. And actually, just that word understood, we talk about the God of our understanding. And so many times we're like, but who could possibly understand God? And that idea, if I could understand it, it's probably not God, right? Well, I don't have it with me. I did not travel with my 1930s dictionary. I didn't bring it, but I do remember the definition. And in the 1930s dictionary that I have, which is it's not even the unofficial one. It's the extra, extra unofficial. But the 1930s dictionary that I have, one of the definitions of understand is to know through experience. And I think that is beautiful, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to know that power which is greater than us through experience. It's not about what I believe, what I think, not even about what I feel. It's about what I experience. And that's what we're after. So that's going to be Bill Wilson's third step. And then it says, I ruthlessly faced my sins. And when we see that word sin, keep in mind, Ebby Thatcher, he was in the Oxford group. They happen to be religious. So of course they're going to have that language. But if I see the word sin, what can I use? Defective character. That's what we're talking about. Because really, what would a sin be? Well, that which is cutting me off from God. Isn't that? Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to look at it. Self-induced nonsense. And then, yeah, gifted desperation. We're getting the acronyms in the chat. Woo! It's acronym hour. Anywho, well, we could do it all hour. We won't. Well, we might. Who knows? Uh, but defects of character, because that's what they are. That's what my defects are. The things in me that are just blocking me off from God, and they also happen to block me off from you. So he ruthlessly faced his sins and became willing to have my newfound, and I want to point this out, capital F, friend. See, if we want to use gifted desperation, or maybe we're not comfortable with the word God, when we see words that are capitalized, no, not all of them, but a lot of them are synonyms for the word God, a word that we can use instead, but also a word that is pointing to that same thing, that conception of a power greater than yourself. And I love that. We're going to read in We Agnostics about how that feeling that we have for God is like that feeling we have for a friend. And I just, yeah, yeah, that would do. God, good. Oh, I can't even read it. It's out of my brain. But that friend, friend. And I really love the idea of looking at my relationship with God. And that's the word that I use, as building a relationship. And man, I'm out in Ontario, I got some friends in Alberta. I'm gonna go home eventually. I don't know when though. That'll be a mystery. But if I don't talk to my friends, we're not gonna feel very close, and we're not gonna feel very connected. Also, if I don't listen to my friend, if it's just me nattering on, like, I'm probably not gonna feel very connected. But if it's about doing things together and experiencing things together. So it's that chatting, that listening, and that experiencing and doing these things together. That's what it's about for me. That's the conception that I roll with. So he became willing to have my newfound friend take them away, root and branch. So he saw his defects of character and became willing to have God take them away, root and branch. And That's another tree metaphor. With the other tree metaphor we saw was on page 12. When we talk about root and branch, that is the whole tree. Nothing left, all of it in its totality, from the depth of it to the biggest outcropping of it, root and branch taking it all away. And he says, I have not had a drink since. I want to point something out. Permanent sobriety is contingent upon these actions that I don't want to take. It says his schoolmate is his friend, Ebby Thatcher. And it says, I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. And what does that look like? Well, it's a little out of order, but it's kind of like a 4 through 7, right? It was kind of a 7, 4, 5, but that's kind of what it was. So those are some of those key action steps. And he says, we made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never, never. Yes, welcome. We're on page 13. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. I don't know about you, but that sounds like an 8th step to me, right? And when he actually goes out and sets right those wrongs, that's his 9th step. And keep in mind, they weren't numbered like this. They weren't labeled like this. I mean, even the idea of the 6 steps was kind of a generous description of what really happened. But essentially, what we're seeing is the basic ideas and the basic genesis of our 12 steps. And ultimately, I'm pointing this out because we're going to see him take a series of actions, and then we're going to see a result. When I read this for a long time, I thought Bill Wilson just had a result. And I showed up to meetings and I didn't have a result. And I thought I couldn't get this thing. So I want to point out the order. He takes the actions and then gets the result. I'm also feeling like really not clever, but like I'm having some impulse control because I'm not saying what the result is yet. And now I want to. Spiritual awakening. I ruined it. Anywho, why am I like this? All right. And so just if you're writing in your book, this whole next paragraph is all about step 11. So it says, I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. And kind of this is a whole etymology tangent that I'm etymology, puns, etymology, fun. But this is a whole tangent I'm going to go on later. But the word conscious, that's Latin in origin. And the word con means with, and the word shus, which is part of the word sire, means knowing. So he was to test the new God knowing within, that experience, that knowing of God within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt. What does sitting quietly look like? Sounds like a meditation practice to me. And then it says asking. And any time in this book it says we ask or we asked or asking, what is that? That's a prayer. Another sneaky prayer. Pew, pew, pew. It's a prayer. I'm so glad that some of you are like joining me on the enthusiasm train. Woo! So it's a prayer. And it says asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. What an interesting way to pray. That's not how I prayed when I got here. It's, kind of like I joke with sponsees, the validation vending machine. Give me what I want. A6, give me a partner. B4, give me a job, C8, get me out of this one. You know what I mean? Like I treat God like a vending machine. But what are we doing? I'm asking. And again, this is a prayer. So this is a prayer that we can take out of this book and take into our lives. God, I ask for direction and strength to meet my problems as you would have me. And then I can sit quietly in doubt. If not in doubt, when in doubt, I can sit quietly and wait for an answer. And that gives us some direction, right? It says, never, never was I to pray for myself, except as my requests bore on my usefulness to others. I'm only praying for me if I can help you. You know what I mean? I'm not praying. So for those out in Ontario, I'm not praying for the so that I can get my way on the 401. You know what I'm saying? I'm praying so that I can be kind and loving and tolerant on the 401. You know what I'm saying? Because those are God's kids on the 401. Even those jerks on the 407 with their fancy dancy transponders. That's a very specific Ontario joke. Well, I'm out here. And it says, then only I might expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. And it says, bottom of page 13, now what we're getting into is step 12 and what step 12 looks like. And what I want to point out is that's going to be the rest of Bill's story, the rest of these pages. So some real emphasis in working with others. But it says, my friend promised, lowercase f. So we're talking about Ebby. Ebby promised. And really, if you're highlighting, underlining, whatever you're doing in your book, promised. This is a promise. This is a promise that Ebby made to Bill, but this is also a promise that is being made to us. If you were to turn to your book to go to page 60, you don't have to. It says, having had. Step 12, having had. A spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. So that promise is in step 12. If I do these steps, if I take these actions to the best of my ability, I will have this result. That's promised to us, which is good, because it can't be alcoholic proof if you're in AA, or if you're in another 12-step fellowship, can't be addict proof, because that's all of us, So if you're wondering, the steps are alcoholic or addict proof. You know what I mean? All I got to do them out of this book to the best of my ability. I can't mess it up. And so my friend promised that when these things were done, point out the order. I have to do them to get the result. I just can't show up and be, I've awakened spiritually. I've got to take some actions. But when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my capital C creator. Again, this is how I look at it relationally. I'm building a relationship with my creator. And then it says that I would have the elements of a way of living. So for those of you who've been coming, I'm big on underlining way of living. This is not a set it and forget it program. I've got to do this as a way of life. But the elements of a way of living, which answered absolutely all my problems, all of them, not just my alcoholism or my addiction, not just the jerks on the 401, all my problems, all of them. And it says, and so how this is the next sentence, how this is framed on the page is a little awkward, but you can make a little note that these are the essential requirements. And we talk about honest, open, and willing, but we don't talk about these a lot. You know what I also realized? I'm on my tablet and it's got like hand recognition. And so like it'll do thumbs up and it's like, you're about to raise your hand. The problem is I'm a hand talker and I really should have turned that off. I didn't know it was on. But these are the essential requirements. So this is what is essential for somebody like me. It says belief in the power of God. And you know what's interesting about that? It's not belief in God. It's belief in the power. Right? I come here, I am without power. I just need to believe that there is power. Belief. That's where I'm starting from. I'm not going to finish. I'm not going to end there, but that's where I'm starting from. So it's belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility. We talk about honest, open, and willing, but we don't talk about willing, honest, and humble that often. And not that, I just think it's interesting. Willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain. Maintain. That sounds like I could keep doing it. You know what I'm saying? Heck yeah, you're humble, Jason. Most humble guy I know. We got a whole podium of humility for you. So to establish and maintain the new order of things. So I've got to have this to build it and to continue. So again, it's a way of life. I'm never done. Those were the essential requirements. So that's what's asked of me. That's what I need to bring to the table. And don't you worry, God's doing the rest. I promise God's doing the heavy lifting. And it's simple, but not easy. And isn't that true? It's a simple series of actions. It's not easy. And let's be frank, it's a lot of actions I don't want to take. And it says a price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self centeredness. You know what's the thing about that price is? Before I've paid it, it looks super expensive. You know what I mean? I I don't. It looks like the in my brain I have Balenciaga. I don't even know what that is. But I feel like anything Balenciaga is expensive. It is expensive. But when I start paying that price, what's the price? Destruction of self centeredness, destroying my self centeredness. It's like I realized I was paying that which was holding me back the whole time. Like in paying, what I'm given is the freedom. And a lot of times I talk about how sobriety and emotional sobriety is a gift. And I point to this. I'm like, it says a price has to be paid. If you're pedantic, price has to be paid, but man, pay that price. And I realized paying the price was part of the gift. Man. And it says, I must turn in all things to capital F, capital L, Father of light, who presides over us all. Capital F, capital L, Father of light. And that small little sentence, Father of light, who presides over us all. Oh, there's a point is that no, sorry, it's out of my brain. Don't worry about it. But for me, that small sentence has everything to do with step 6 and 7. And it doesn't have to for you. But for me, with step 6 and step 7, what am I doing? I can't overcome my defects of character. I can't, you know, punch my procrastination later. I can't overcome my anger. I can't do it on my own. But what do? How do I demonstrate willingness? I turn in all things to God. That's what I do. The God of my own understanding, seeking God's love, like God's power, just the presence of God in everything that I do. That's what I do. And that's what I try to do. Let's be frank, I fall short a lot. And now what we're going to read is what's known as Bill Wilson's white light spiritual experience. Does all mean all? Absolutely it does, Terry. All means all. All. And I love that. And so two things, because there's two alls. I must turn in all things. So all things mean all things. And man, I don't know about you. Absolutely. I don't know about you. But I don't want to keep talking about the highways in Ontario. I was just on them a lot. But like I can go to the grocery store, I can go to a meeting, I can be with my family. And the outside circumstances of what happens can be the exact same. But the internal circumstances the internal experience that I have can be radically different. Turning to God in all things when I don't drive. I'm a passenger. It's a lot easier to turn in all things when I'm not the one driving. But turning in all things. But also, I love that idea of Father of Light who presides over us all, as in all of us. And you can be like, no, not me. But I just love that idea that God does not have grandkids. God has children. God loves all of us. And when I treat you and I look for the presence of God within you, and actually I was doing my morning prayers and morning meditate, or no, this was last night. Sorry, I'm in a different time zone. I'm all over the place. It's 2 hours. So you guys in the UK, don't let me get away with this nonsense. It's only a 2-hour time difference. But I was just sitting, it was last night, it was after my evening review, and I sort of got this guidance where it's like, man, and it's we relearn a lot of these things that we forget. And it's that idea that like I ought to treat every encounter with every human being that I have as an encounter with God. Do you know what I mean? Like the presence of God within you. You guys don't have to. I'm a bit of a keener. I won't tell you what to do, but I'll let you know when I treat every encounter with every human being that I have in the presence of awe and wonder at the God within them. It changes how I show up to all the things that I have to do. And do I do that all the time? No, I'm very human and very flawed. Had to do a 10th step this morning, but that's what it's there for. So this is Bill Wilson's white light spiritual experience, his spiritual awakening. And it's known as a lot of times as like, he had a spiritual awakening of the luminous variety, which is to say white and light. And we're going to read through it and I'm going to talk a little about it. And then I'm going to point some things out because you guys know I love finding the sneaky descriptions of the spiritual awakening. So it says these were revolutionary and drastic proposals. Any of y'all ever sit at a meeting or sit on a Zoom room and see the steps on the wall or the Zoom screen and thought, ooh, pretty drastic, right? Yeah. And it says, but the moment I fully accepted them, I took the actions. This was the result. So he takes the actions, then he gets the result. It says the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. And yes, to fully accept, to fully surrender, to fully dive in, to fully do this thing, leaving nothing out. Yes. But what Bill Wilson had was he could see in his mind's eye, this feeling of being lifted up on a mountaintop. And he could feel this wind, not of wind, but of spirit that went through him. And you guys might be, whoa, that's a little whoa. But bear with me with that. I just want to tie this back. We were talking about Bill Wilson's grandfather last week and his grandfather's beliefs. And his grandfather had one of those 1 in a million spiritual experiences. And Bill Wilson's grandfather had his spiritual experience on top of a literal mountain. Bill Wilson's grandfather climbed up to the top of Mount Aurelius, which is in the state of New York, and had a spiritual experience. And I think it's so incredible that Bill Wilson imagined or saw himself on the top of a mountain. It's just the fun. This is my nerdy stuff. So if you're like, that's not fun, Paige, it's fun for me. And I'm so sorry for dragging y'all with me. But he had this vision of being on the mountaintop. But sometimes, man, we hear things like, oh, like, whoa, that's crazy, that's insane. Like, what was going on? But what happened to Bill? Like, we can lay aside some of the experience, like being on a mountain, but there's some elements of it that are common to many spiritual experiences. A feeling that is a bit electric, perhaps a sense of victory, like the war is over. I've come out the other side, we've won. That's not crazy. A peace and serenity as I had never known. That's not insane. A feeling of being lifted up. That's not crazy. But that being said, there's something that I have heard in the room sometimes, which there's something in me that rails against. And it's that idea that if you're ever in the rooms and sometimes people will say things like, oh, well, I mean, Bill Wilson, you had to have one like that, but you don't expect to have one like Bill. I'm going to watch my language, but nonsense. No. I don't think I ought ever sell the power of God, these 12 steps, short. I not once sold the power of alcohol short. Not once did I sell the power of crack cocaine short. I maybe should have said those words quietly in a hotel. It was selling and crack and selling and booze. Ooh, not for sale. But this work, it's an avocation if you'd like it. It's free. Ooh, gonna get a knock on the door. I feel it. But not once did I ever sell the power of alcohol short or drugs short. Yeah, Terry's got the 1930s definition of nonsense. Might not be historically accurate. You can check it in the chat. I'm watching my language though. But no, and I don't know about you. Did anyone here ever stay well on one drink? Stay well on one drug? Not me. I don't want to try to stay well and coast on one experience. I want to continue to dive in and seek new experiences. I don't want to rest. And man, sometimes we hear like, don't sell, like yes, seek, absolutely. I don't ever want to sell this power short. And the more that I seek, the more that I experience. And like, that's the stuff. Of course we get our lives back in families and vehicles that we can take on the 407 because man, we get our lives back and we get transponders. But deeper than that, we get these experiences, and plural. But anywho, that was Bill's. That was Bill's. I encourage you to have your own. Yeah. All right. So it says, for a moment, I was alarmed and I called my friend the doctor. So he calls up Silkworth to ask if I was still sane. Like, so he had a really powerful experience. And so much so that he's going to be like, hey, have I lost my mind? You know? And he says he listened in wonder as I talked. Finally, he shook his head, saying, something has happened to you. I don't understand, but you would better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. Anything is better. The good doctor now sees many men who have had such experiences. He knows that they are real. So Bill Wilson calling up, have I lost my mind? And now Silkworth's like, oh yeah, this happens all the time. It's a result. We get a powerful result. And it says, while I lay in the hospital, the thought came to mind that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They, in turn, might work with others. And if you're writing in your book, you can make a little note that's Bill's vision. And the reason I'm saying make a little note is it'll take a little while, but eventually we're going to get to the chapter, A Vision for You. And I like to make that little tie-in because in this moment, Bill Wilson has the vision of I could help somebody else who could help somebody else who could help somebody else. And that vision is given to us in that chapter, A Vision for You. And I love that idea, that moment that he has that thought, I could help others. That's now given to me. That's now my responsibility. And so now what we're going to see is Bill Wilson's 12-step work. So he's going to go out and he's going to do his utmost to carry this message. And it says, my friend, that's Ebby, had emphasized with emphasis, emphasized the absolute necessity. So we're not mincing words. And it says, of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Demonstrating. Miraculous demonstrations for some of those that were at the conference. What my responsibility is to demonstrate. And this is kind of the lens or the vision or how I show up. I see that idea of the principles not being, and if you see them this way, totally cool. Like I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is this is my experience. For me, the principles of the 12 steps aren't a nebulous like hope and faith and willingness and humility. For me, it's the tangible actions of the steps are the principles, which for me, it's like, oh, that's what I'm demonstrating. So when I this morning, when I caught a resentment, how did I catch that? But I got a resentment. And what did I do? I prayed. What did I do? I reached out for a 10th step call. What did I do? I turned my thoughts to people I could help. That's what I did. For me, it's a demonstration of the actions. And it says, particularly was it imperative. Now, imperative is of the utmost importance to work with others as he had worked with me. Of the utmost importance, working with others. That's not the nerdy stuff. That's baseline requirement for joyful, permanent, contented sobriety. That's what I got to do. So faith without works was dead. So belief in the power of God, or belief in the power of the steps, or belief in the power of AA, CA, DAA, 12-step fellowships, belief without action, I will get loaded. I will drink again. Faith without works was dead. He said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. Many things in my life have been appallingly true. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life, this is me being pedantic, but it's not progress, not perfection. It's spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. I'm there to grow spiritually and aim for perfection spiritually. I point that out because often I can confuse the gifts of recovery or the gifts of sobriety with sobriety itself. So it said, if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge, see, I'm meant to grow. It's not meant to be set and forget it. It's meant to grow, to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work. Oh man, work. Yeah. But the work is continuing to work these steps, continuing to take these actions, work and self sacrifice for others. Absolutely. 10, 11, 12. Working with others, continue to take inventory, continuing to admit when I'm wrong, continuing to grow and deepen and develop that relationship with the God of my understanding and working for others. He could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Certain as in there will be. There will be trials and low spots ahead. It's not because I'm an alcoholic or an addict. It's not because I'm in recovery or I am recovered. It is because I'm a human being, and trials and low spots are the human experience. There is loss, there is life, there is death, there's tragedy, there is. And one it says he could not survive, and that's that word survive. That's telling us that this is a life and death matter. If I do not grow spiritually, I will die. And that's the black and white reality of my step one experience. But the irony is that when I accept that black and white predicament that I find myself in, man, the world opens up in color. Yeah, I don't know about you, but when I was separated from the drink or the drug, man, the world was gray. It was like the picture behind me, maybe it's more of a sepia. But like, man, the world was gray. But now today the world is vibrant. And it's not just because I'm in Ontario in the fall. Y'all get some reds in your trees. We don't get it's yellow. We get the yellow. Anywho, there will be trials and low spots ahead, and this is a survival deal. And it said, if he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. That is our experience. That's what he's saying. And I love this line. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. Abandoning myself with enthusiasm. Now, for me, I take that as a benchmark line. Is that how I'm showing up? Am I abandoning myself with enthusiasm to the idea of helping others? And I just love that. And that word enthusiasm, it's Greek. So a lot heavy on the etymology today, heavy on the 401, heavy on the etymology, but it's Greek in origin. And the definition essentially means to be filled with God's Spirit, abandoning myself, filled with God's Spirit to the idea of helping others. I love that. And this is interesting. It was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which time I found little work. So it was, on page 3, we spoke about how I had arrived. Man, he doesn't continue to have that I arrived experience. In fact, no, we're just an hour. We're just an hour. We'll let you, well, we might, no, no, we might end up right on time, which miracles happen. So again, if you are wondering if there is a power greater than ourselves, if I end on time, that'll be evidence. No, I'm pretty good. All right. So he wasn't working for a year and a half. He struggled to find work, and actually, Bill and Lois, they lost their house in sobriety, and I talk about that trials and low spots. Life still happens, and financial success is not like, yes, it comes and it will come, but man, that's not what this thing is about. It's about growing spiritually. But this is Bill's reaction. He's a human being. I was not too well at the time, and I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. I'm sure none of us can relate to those waves, just me. And it says, this sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. Now, if you weren't sure about me nattering on about this not being a set it and forget it program, if you weren't sure about me nattering on about the importance of continuing to grow that spiritual awakening, to have more than one spiritual experience, to deepen my relationship with God, I mean, let's go across the page 14. Right? There's a sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known, utter confidence, lifted up. He is a powerful spiritual awakening across the page 15. I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. I can't stay well. on an old experience. I got to continue to have experiences. I've got to continue to seek. And if I, and I'm just going off on a tangent as I do. It's like trying to figure out your turnoff when you're driving in Ontario. It's like, where do we go? Like roads are a little straighter in Alberta. It's just that way, north, Red Deer. You know what I'm saying? Uh, um, but that idea that if you're here today and you're in pain, and you're here today and you are filled with those that self-pity and that resentment and that fear, and when you feel it when it's on you, you know what I mean? It's on me, and I know it's on me. It doesn't matter if you've been here a while, you've been recovered for a while, man. If you're new, if you're struggling, if you're in and out, man, if that's you, what I want you to know, it doesn't take long to get well. It does not take long to have this experience. And man, well, I hope I can't see who's all here. I hope Terry's still here. I mean, Terry's taking him. We were at a conference, and Terry took this gentleman that was hurting and struggling, and took him through his 4 through 7 over the course of the conference. It does not take long. I know it was the most beautiful thing, like powerful. It's such a gift to be able to watch that, and to see that man how he was when I saw him before, tears in his eyes, struggling. Yeah, Terry's so cute, so freaking cool. To see him after, he was walking different, he was carrying himself different. There was a light. It's just what, over like a day or two. It does not take long for this thing to grab hold. And there's hope in that. And we don't have to be in pain. And it says, but I soon found when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. When nothing else is working, I go work with somebody else. That's what I'm called to do. It says, many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It is a design for living. That's annoying because that's a way of life. Design for living. This is how we're going to live our life. Oh man. I really want to just set it and forget it. But it is a design for living that works in rough going. This works. And I mean, it's not like a promise, but it's a little promisey. You know what I'm saying? Like that this thing is going to work when life's coming at you. It says, we have commenced to make many fast friends. There's a deep intimacy that happens very quickly. And it says, a fellowship has grown up among us, of which it is a wonderful thing to feel a part. Tying back in, another little maybe a promise. I'm not going to say for sure, but the joy of living we really have. See, if it's not a promise, it's our experience. We really have, even under pressure and difficulty, joy. Joy is deeper than happiness. The joy of living, even under pressure and difficulty. That's powerful. I've seen hundreds of families set their feet, and families, not just the single member who's suffering from this illness, but the families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere. Not the destination, but the path. See, I got to continue on this journey. I'm not done. It's a path, and I got to move on that path. And it says, I have seen the most impossible domestic situations righted, feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I've seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. Business and professional men have regained their standing. There is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. And I just wanted to point something out. Not been over, like this is when it was like 80 dudes, like 80 middle-aged-ish dudes. Oh God, I think I'm middle-aged. Sorry, existential crisis, mid-big buck. 80 middle-aged dudes who had similar experiences. That's a line that has become more true as the years gone on. There is not a single problem that I can bring that somebody has not in 12 step has found the solution, right? And this is a way of life which answers all my problems. I just want to point something out. The answer is not always going to look what I think it should look like. So is oh man, tangent again. We're almost done. Uh, but some of you guys don't know is that I have a physical disability. I have some neurological problems, which mean that to get around, I use a wheelchair. It was real fun to be at the conference where people did not know that, and they'd be like, "Oh my goodness, what happened?" It's like, no, that's me. Surprise! Woo! Plot twist. Uh, but the trouble and difficulty which was overcome in my life was not that I'm walking again, but that doesn't carry the shame and the self-pity and the self-hatred, that I can have joy. Even I'm pointing at my wheelchair, y'all can't see it. I'll do after the study, I'll do a room tour if you want to see the Super 8 in Cambridge. Woo! And sorry, focus. Welcome. Oh, all right. So it says in one Western city, that's Akron, Ohio, and its environs. That would be the suburbs of Akron. There are 1,000 of us and our families. We meet frequently, and this is why we have meetings. This is why we come together, so that newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. We come together to offer this hope. Yeah, well, hold on. Let me see if I can get that. Bill is a sneaky description of the triangle in his story. Recovery. Friend promised when these things were done. Page 13. Service. Thinking about helping others in the hospital bed. Demonstration of principles in all his affairs. Page 14. Unity. The fellowship has grown up among us. If you don't know what I read a comment. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a circle and triangle. It's a symbol that's used in Alcoholics Anonymous, recovery, unity, service. And so Terry was saying, hey, we got a sneaky circle and triangle. Delightful. I love the sneaky stuff. That's what keeps me coming. Well, that and the newcomers, because that's what I'm here to help, and or at least those who are suffering, those who do not know that there's a way out. And that's why we have these meetings, to help those who have not found this way. I was surprised I was able to come back from that tangent so seamlessly. So seamlessly. I wanted to point that out. No seams, it's great. So at these informal gatherings, one may see from 50 to 200 persons. We're growing in numbers and power. And keep in mind, it's lowercase p, but the power is not our own. The power is the power that works through us. It says an alcoholic in his cups. An alcoholic in his cups is a drinking alcoholic. Yeah. An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. And so Rob put some information about him in the chat. His name was Bill C. He died in 1936. He committed suicide in their home after living with Bill and Lois for a year. So imagine, having this human being, this man, live with you for a year. And he also struggled with gambling. And he stole $700 worth of their clothes and their luggage, and passed away. And I believe he was from Winnipeg. Is that true? No, not necessarily. I just heard that somewhere, and I thought I'd be like, oh, he's from Toronto. Yeah, Toronto. Yeah. So sorry, that is the wrong energy to bring to the story. I just realized, but I was like, I was just out in Toronto. Focus. But what I find really interesting about the story of Bill C is because I had to dig for that information. I had to find it. I had to look into it. And of course I'm a nerd, and I do that. But when stuff like that happens to me, do you know what I want to do? I want to make it about me. And I want to tell you all those details so you knew what I went through and what about me, and the humility that Bill has. Bill is telling this story to us so that we can be prepared to help us. And his thoughts are with Bill. Bill Wilson, his thoughts are with Bill. See, this poor man who suffered. Bill's not making it about himself. And it says there is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. And there really is. And fun in places and in ways I didn't think possible. Man, if you would have told me I'd be just loving life going through Bill's story, I wouldn't have believed you. But it happens. Joy of living, right? I suppose some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity. Worldliness is that we're a part of the world. I'm not living in, I'm definitely not living in a monastery on a mountaintop, you know? I'm a part of the world. And that levity, that ability to joke, to laugh. You know, Mark Houston talks about wearing the world as a loose garment, that idea of just a part of life. And it says, but just underneath, there is deadly earnestness. So we take this seriously. It says faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. So that idea, faith without works is dead. Faith working in and through me 24 hours a day. And I just if you ever need a visual for what that can look like, I love that St. Francis prayer. And I love the idea that my job is just to get me out of the way. And then God can work through me. And that's really helpful when I have to do things that I'm scared to do, or I don't want to do, or it's uncomfortable, or, you know, just get me, or, you know, if you're struggling with drivers on the road, just get me out of the way. Let God work through me. Most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. Now it's capitalized. In the original manuscript, they had that word as heaven. We need look no further for heaven. But there were some religious people who said, no, you can't say heaven is here and now. Heaven's a over there place, you know, and so they change it. But utopia means heaven. But also keep in mind paradise. That's what we're talking about. And it says we have it with us right here and now. So where is heaven found? Right here and now. That's where it's found. And I'm not like I don't want to talk about like anything sort of super theological, but I'm just going to share a bit of my experience. Where was hell in my life? The here and now, when I was exactly, yeah, it's in between these ears. You know what I mean? I can create heaven or hell in my present experience based on my connection or lack thereof. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I create the misery and the suffering, and as a result of doing this work, heaven here and now, you know. And it says we have it right here and now. And it says each day my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself in a winding circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. And I love taking that and looking, is my sobriety multiplying? So Bill Wilson talking with Ebby Thatcher began to multiply. Is my sobriety multiplying? Am I working with others? Are they working with others? Just something for me to look at. And it grows. And it says Bill Wilson, or Bill W., co-founder of AA, died January 24th, 1971. So next week we're gonna pick up and there's a solution. And so awesome having you all here. And I really truly hope you all join me for next week. So we're gonna stop the recording and we'll get it set up where we can pray together. So thank you.